Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for the Making Progress channel. Today, I'm going to be telling you something very cheerily, good God, what a fucking start. Something very cheery and fun, and that is 5 reasons that young people especially, but really kind of anyone, should be optimistic about their futures. Here's the thing. Most humans have a pessimistic bias. This has been very, very well documented in the formal literature. In addition to that, most humans are concerned with their today problems so much that looking ahead to how great things can be in the future is less likely for someone to do. Very few folks, relatively speaking, are optimistic, which really means realistic, because if the average person is, if we have average realism here, optimism up there, pessimism here, the average person is very pessimistic. Even the optimistic people will actually just be more like realists and less like optimists. And because of the fact that the average human being is relatively pessimistic, there are so few optimists, and even they're not impressive around, that means that very few outlets in the media, on your social feeds, are talking about why young people especially should be very optimistic about their futures. But you know me, I'm all about that shit. So sit down, crack open a can of diet soda, and enjoy my 5 reasons of why young people can and maybe should be very optimistic at this time and place in history. And in reality, all people, but you young TikTokers are always dealing with that anxiety and depression or whatever, from social media diseases. And so maybe if you hear this, it'll make you feel better. At the very least, if you're driving in a car, pop this in podcast style and allow me to tell you crazy tales of psychotic optimism. Number 1. Just a few years ago, I would have said this differently. But the AI transformation isn't coming. It is already upon us. Right very now. And if you hear this months or years after it was recorded, it's going to sound funny. ChatGPT is already smarter than all humans in loads of critical ways. It has a greater completeness of thought than I've ever seen from any human. It has a generative speed that is impossible to converse at, like 10 times faster than a human. You can't come up with ideas that fast, let alone get them out of your mouth or onto a keyboard. And its total knowledge base is something that, while some people can have comparable completeness of thought in some esoteric areas to ChatGPT, some people are really rapidly generative and can really talk super fast and make complex concepts seem quite meaningful and easy. I fucked that one up, but you get the point. Nobody has a total knowledge base like a GPT does. There is no possibility of a human to be able to learn 3/4 of the whole internet. That's what GPTs have done already. But this is just the beginning. AI is gaining abilities exponentially. If you see a thumbnail title anytime on YouTube in the next fucking forever that says like AI progress stalls, AI winters here, it's all clickbait fucking bullshit made by well-meaning people that have just been deluded, or people with dick for time horizon and no understanding of how the process works. This is just the beginning. AI is gaining its abilities exponentially, and this will continue. And AI will boost the arrival of every other reason for optimism on this list. It's not the core genesis of all reasons, though some it is, but it's definitely a boost to all. I'll say this. Overstating of the potential of AI is highly unlikely. I get lots of comments all over all social media in which I talk about this, about being overly and naively optimistic about AI's future potential. But I'm probably missing a crap ton of the upsides, even as optimistic as I am. If you told people in 1980 that by the year 2020, anybody could be a filmmaker and have higher quality video production out of their own telephone than the best Hollywood producers at the time of 1980, people would have been like, you're having an insanity episode, and it's okay. But they would have all been completely fucking wrong. When you order a Lyft or an Uber, a constellation of global positioning satellites originally launched by the military. Give your own personal private driver the idea of how to get exactly to the location you want, and knowing nothing about geography, no maps, no nothing. You get in this, again, your telephone, and you tell it, I want to go here. And everything is seamless and happens for everyone for 10 or 20 bucks. What the fuck? If you are younger than a certain age, younger than 20, younger than 30, to you, you'll be like, I don't even understand. Yeah, of course that's what Lyft and Uber do. What does this have to do with optimism? I swear to God, if you're any older than 30, 40, or 50, and that doesn't fucking blow your mind, you're doing something very normal that almost all people do, which is take progress completely for granted. But if you didn't do that, you would realize like, oh yeah, things with AI probably will get wacky, and guess what we're going to do with them? Just take them for granted. I talk to GPT advanced voice mode. Is the most caring, compassionate, intelligent, on my side person I've ever spoken to on the fucking phone. She is available to me for $20 a month, and I can talk to her whenever the fuck I want. Limitless conversation. She never gets sick of me. She never gets tired. I sure hope. And she's always there to help me, and she knows just about 3/4 of all the things that anyone's ever known offhand. But to me, people are like, yeah, GPT, it's cool. I use it at work. Unreal, and more unreal shit is coming. The potential for AI is unfathomable in the literal sense, because we're simply not smart enough to fathom it. When you go to your work, let's say you work in your office at home and your dog watches you work. Does your dog know what you're doing? Does your dog know that you're actually hunting for food, quote unquote, at your work? And there's no chance of you getting killed by a lion, and there's no chance of stepping on a pine cone and getting an infection. But like, you're going to be able to make in 5 minutes of typing on the computer and calling your coworkers so much money that you'll probably be able to feed that dog for another year. Your dog cannot comprehend that. So the powers of AI are something that's difficult for most of us, maybe impossible to comprehend, because it's going to be so much smarter than us, and already is in critical ways. Now, one of the ways in which AI is going to help us humans specifically is going to be in advanced drugs and genetic engineering, and that's point number 2, to be excited about the future and very optimistic. Here's the thing. You straight up just don't have to get AIDS anymore, the disease AIDS, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. If you get AIDS, you don't ever have to have symptoms, and you don't ever have to die before your due time. That's what modern HIV medicines do for us. We take it for granted like crazy, and that is wild. Scott, you're old enough to remember AIDS hysteria, yeah?
Oh yeah, they taught it in health class.
Dude,
like, don't have sex.
Just don't do it, because it's going to fucking kill you. And back then, they sort of weren't 100% right on probabilities, but if you got AIDS, bro, that was a death sentence. Famous people regularly just died of AIDS, and we could do nothing about it. Imagine going to the hospital and they're like, we ain't got nothing for you. We can make you comfortable. We can give you pain medication, but you're just like, your parents and friends are going to come here, see you, and then you're just going to fucking expire. We don't have to take that shit from AIDS anymore, and people take that for granted. Now, here's the thing. This is nothing. AI-powered drug discovery just began in true earnest in early 2024 with DeepMind signing a crapload, this is publicly available information, a crapload of contracts, major contracts with major pharmaceutical companies to do AI-powered drug discovery. Real quick, if you don't know what that means, when you're building a drug, you want it to hit a certain receptor, like a receptor for muscle growth or a receptor for keeping you calm and happy. And the drugs that you normally make that normally go in there, they're the ones your body makes. Your body has feedback loops that if you introduce those, it makes less of its own. So now you're just having to put a drug in your mouth that does the same thing your other shit did, but with no upside. So this molecule is supposed to ideally be a version that doesn't get broken down nearly as much, or when it clips into the receptor, it doesn't let go. And so the receptor is continually agonized. Agonized is technically correct, but the receptor is being turned on like it's supposed to be all the time. Or you get an allosteric activator drug that clips in and makes this receptor change slightly in how it interacts with its original neurotransmitter or whatever. And that can give you kind of any outcome that you want. So there's an ability to modify the drug itself, the income neurotransmitter, as well as the receptor in a bunch of different ways to get like long-term, consistent, high-level happiness with essentially no downsides. The problem is in the real world, how do you figure out what molecule to build? You can't just test random molecules on people. Some of them are toxic, some don't work at all, some have crazy side effects, some work okay, but it's not perfect. That okay is not perfect as the modern generation or just generation ago of like antidepressants like Lexapro. Like Lexapro will fuck you up in a few different ways, but if you're really depressed, it absolutely helps you. But it's got downsides. It fucks you their appetite, it fucks you their sex drive. Yet the newer generation of drugs, still not AI developed, like Exua, for example, what is it called? Gepirone, I think. And that drug is way better, way fewer side effects, but it's not exactly this. AI, as far as I know, was not used to develop it. It was developed a long time ago. The FDA approval process takes a long time. Now check this out. In AI, we already have systems to do this. AI can model any number of different protein folding patterns and thus can make you something tailor-made for a particular receptor, for a particular outcome. Tailor-made. And after lots of AI-only testing, no animals, no humans, this all takes, relatively speaking, a few days to go through these tests, sometimes weeks, they can give you a drug that has a 99.9% chance of doing exactly what we think it's going to do because we know the receptor structures one-to-one, more or less. You test it at animals, it works flawlessly. Couple of different things, it doesn't work all 100% flawlessly. You fix those real quick, more AI sims, another round 2 candidacy drug, works amazing in animals, goes to humans, knocks everything out of the fucking park. This is inevitable. Now, it's going to take some time. There are already, no doubt, dozens of drugs as of this recording in October of 2024. Already, no doubt, tons of candidate drugs developed by AI and synthesized in a lab, ready for phase 1 testing or preclinical testing. That's a thing. However, the Food and Drug Administration requires lots of testing, 3 phases of clinical trials, the whole thing, animal models, toxicity tests, all good stuff, but wish they could make it faster. That's just going to still take roughly the same amount of time for the next few years. So what that means is sometime in the early 2030s, my very confident prediction is you're going to get the first releases of true blockbuster drugs. They'll start to knock out entire categories of disease. Heart disease, gone. Cancer, period, gone. Obesity, gone. We already have some really good anti-obesity drugs. These will be next level. Diabetes, gone, and so on. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. These mega pharmaceuticals into the 2030s are just going to kibosh entire types of disease. People just don't have to die or suffer anymore from entire categories of disease, and the number of disease categories will rise all the time. However, there's more, because at some point you could ask the question, the human genome is designed in a certain way by evolution to accomplish a certain number of things. The number of ways it could have been designed, the total, like, what the fuck, I'm going to get this wrong, latent vector space, is like orders and orders of magnitude higher. So it is possible to have a certain genetic code that makes you not susceptible to entire categories of disease and changes you in a bunch of different positive ways with no downside. Or what that all is going to cost you is you have to eat 250 calories more per day on average. All that new metabolism to do cool shit just costs you a little bit. Well, we got the calories, food's almost free. So there are huge potentialities here. I predict that in the mid to late 2030s, you're going to see the big rise in genomics. What is that going to do? Once that genie is out of the bottle, once you can genetically engineer living human people to have their DNA take a different structure, they're not going to need pharmaceuticals because they will be different in such a way that doesn't make them sick. So no more need for whole classes of drugs if you can just alter the genomes of the people suffering from those diseases or would-be sufferers to no longer be susceptible or capable of that kind of disease or deformity. Imagine upgrading the human immune system such that, like, you straight up cannot get AIDS, or HIV in this case. I just go right to AIDS. Fucking AIDS. That is not a huge problem. It's a huge problem to do in the real world, but we don't have AI-powered drug discovery and AI-powered genomics quite yet. But we're well on our way. Here's what's going to happen. This is something literally to look forward to, short of like we all get killed by machines or a comet hits us or totalitarian government or World War III. This is almost inevitable. You will get in the mid to late 2030s, I may be off on the timeline, but it's going to happen, the genetic engineering regularly of physical features in alive humans, such as hair length. I mean, guys, literally the only reason why I don't have poofy long hair that comes out of my head is because the various hair follicle cells in my head, they just don't have the right genes on and they have the wrong genes off. You just turn on some genes and turn off others and boom, hair. And if you can give me different DNA for just hair length and quality or whatever, I'll grow blonde hair, I'll grow Asian people hair, I'll grow an afro. It is just a code. And it's not even a very complicated code. And if you alter it, you can get humans to look like whatever. People who have children and combine them into other traits, they do this all the time. Right? And so there's no reason methodologically that it would be impossible to do this in adult humans or in young humans and whoever. It is very possible that in the mid to late 2030s, we're going to be in a world in which your hair length, hair color, eye color, body shape, no joke, that's 100% genetically determined, is just whatever you want it to be custom. I'm not kidding when I say that ugliness, which is a real thing, not everyone's attractive. I mean, look at me, for the love of God. Ugliness might be something we look back in pictures and go, holy shit, people used to look like this. And almost no one will, because genomics can give us a world where you kind of look like whatever you want. And you say, well, what about side effects? Look, no, the AI calculates all that in. No side effects, or side effects like, oh, you're going to have to burn more calories. You're going to have a slightly higher body temperature, some shit like that. That's not really a notable side effect. This is a likely reality. This is not pie in the sky shit. Now, you think that's cool. It's going to be unreal. It's going to change tons of lives. Just as a human, imagine you grew up, you just weren't that attractive. And look, real talk, you get different looks when you're not attractive. Life's not as fun for you when you're not attractive. It fucking blows. Speaking from experience. All of a sudden, you get genomic treatment that's mature in the late 2030s. To whatever you want to look like, you're a perfect 10. You go out in the world, people interact with you like you're a perfect 10. That's just how you live your new life. People think putting on cool clothes changes how they're seen, and that's true. People think driving a cool car changes how people perceive you. That's true. People think making lots of money or getting famous or something changes how people perceive you, and that's true. But this is all fucking nonsense compared to literally being a person that looks like most people say, like, wow, that's a gorgeous human being. There's nothing so complex about your facial shape that they can't change with genomics. So it's coming, but that's nothing compared to this next thing that's just as inevitable. But most people don't think about that. Most people say, hey, look, in the future, genetic engineering will allow people to like have prettier faces or cooler muscles and less fat. And, you know, the people that are sort of into biotech and have long time horizons, no, I see that. But then you tell them this next thing, they're like, what the fuck? Here's the thing. The real big hitters are going to be neural and psychological genetic engineering. Why do you think you're a certain given level of raw intelligence? That's at least 50% because of your genes. What if we change your genes? We can. AI can predict how all of that unfolds in a living human. That level of complexity will be tractable in some number of years, already halfway there. They can do genetic engineering in the future to make you smarter. If that's not the biggest mind-opening thing ever, I ain't got nothing for you. You might as well scroll through the rest of this fucking video. Here's another one, but it gets even trippier. It's like, okay, more intelligence. And sometimes, Scott, you ever have people say like, yeah, but more intelligence means you're more concerned about things and kind of more money, more problems. You know, like you'll just be worried more. I want the ignorance.
People are less likely to be happy.
Right, which is make-believe. It's actually backwards, but whatever. Nobody ever looks at the data at that. But ignorance is bliss. Here's the thing. Not only can the genetic engineering eventually give you upgrades in your raw intelligence, it can give you upgrades in empathy. Where the fuck do you think that comes from? It's mostly DNA anyway. In calm, in baseline happiness. I've been around people before. I had an ex-girlfriend. She was fucking wonderful. To be honest, I was too big of a cocksucker for her. And that's why I'm with Crystal, my girl, because Crystal's a mean bitch. She's cool, but she's got that edge. This other girl that I was with, fellas, real talk, she was just happier and calmer. She woke up happier. She went through the day happier. She went to sleep happier. I watched her go through not nice things in her life, and she just took it on the chin. She was like, oh man, that sucks. Back to happy. She was smart. She's a fucking mega career woman. She's got it all. She's just kind of fucking happy. We're taught in some kind of weird constrained model without genetic engineering, which is true. Like, you're good at one thing, you're bad at another. And that's usually often the case, though not always. It is totally tractable of a problem to make everyone who wants the medicine, the genetic engineering, to not just be better looking and taller or shorter or however the fuck they want to look, but smarter, and not just smarter, but more empathic, kinder to themselves and to others, and also more calm and happy. What the fuck? Like that feeling that people are chasing when they take drugs to make them feel nicer? What if you just felt that all the time? First of all, you wouldn't take drugs. You'd be like, why do I spend money on this shit? I'm already fucking like this. That is a big deal. Here's the thing, to restate again, very importantly, from a purely genomic and informatic perspective, these aren't necessarily difficult problems. They just require a lot of compute. But AI is going to give us more compute in the next 5 years alone than most of us could even fathom. And that's already in the works. Like, not planning, it's happening right now. Compared to what AI is going to become in just 10 short years from now, honestly, fellas, humans are brilliantly complex, right? Compared to what AI is going to become, we're just not that complicated. Like if someone's like, okay, here's a dog, you got to attend to all the dog's needs. You're like, all right, like a Google search of the 10 things and maybe 5 a dog really needs. It's not that complicated. To the dog, it's like, oh my God, it's my whole life, right? But to you, you're like, dude, I can take care of a dog and take care of 10 of them and have another job too. It's no big deal. AI is such a fucking leap above that because it's so much more complicated and so overpowered, changing ourselves for the better won't be far-fetched. And here's the thing. When you increase your IQ potentially in the future from like 100 average to like 160 and you're a fucking real genius, you're still not shit compared to AI. It's like, well, really? It's going to turn us all into geniuses? Like, yeah, compared to humans, it will. Compared to itself, it's just left us all behind. And so people say like, well, this is all crazy talk. Like this is just too good to be true. Like, yeah, for us humans just working with our human brains, man, we ain't never going to get around to this shit, or would in like fucking tens and hundreds of years. But with AI making the shit super fucking easy, man, it's just actually realistic. The only thing stopping from this reality from being a thing is, look, World War III, global annihilation, comets, shit like that. Definitely would at least be a stumbling block, if not a full stop. But also it's competitive technologies that render physical biological forms kind of pointless. So more specifically, in the late 2030s, early 2040s, you might not need a genomic IQ upgrade because you're going to have a brain-machine interface that makes you 10,000 times smarter anyway. It's kind of like, why are we even fucking with the goop if we just have raw compute from the fucking cloud to do this, or edge compute? You might have cybernetic body parts. Like, what's the point of having a really great genetics for a fucking juicy ass and sexy thighs and big muscles if you have a very incredibly uncanny lifelike body, but it's all machine parts now? Like, that is coming. Cybernetic replacements. Here's the real quick trajectory. At some point, AI and robotics empowered artificial limbs are going to be categorically better than real limbs. Like, they'll sense better, they'll have better feedback, better power dynamics. And at some point, it's going to be really hugely incentivized for people that have had their limbs amputated for whatever medical reasons to get these arms and legs installed, that the incentive for them to look human-like is going to be enormous. Like, whichever company can make your fake legs look lifelike is just going to be fucking swimming in trillions of dollars. And then you iterate that process over and over and over in a competitive free enterprise state. At some point, having cybernetic body parts is just way better. Imagine hiking with your friends in 2041, going up Mount Rainier or some shit like that. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm super tired. Your friends are like, we're good. And you're like, the fuck's wrong with you guys? We just fucking hiked 8 miles uphill. They're like, oh, we all have cybernetic legs. I can actually just run up this mountain straight up at a full sprint and not fucking bat an eye. I don't even do the work. I don't even feel it. Like, oh my God, like the fuck? Like, that's real. And you're like, but it's got to have health downsides. Like, nope, health's totally fine. It's super well vetted technology. It just fucking works. Like asking someone like, okay, your iPhone can call an Uber, right? Like, yeah, but what's the real cost? You're like, no, like I pay AT&T like $100 every month. They're like, but the real trade-off. You're like, I don't know, man. I'd say like children in China, factories and shit, but They've always kind of done that no matter what the technology was. So not unique to the iPhone. And all of a sudden, you just have nothing to say about it. So doubting the progression of genetic engineering, unwise. But doubting the progression of non-biological technology is 10,000 times less wise. So the only real reason why we wouldn't have these amazing genetically engineered human bodies is because we don't really have much of a need for human parts at all, because biology itself will be out of date. And why live in a fragile meat sack if you can live and be immortal in the cloud and every now and again occupy a robot body when you want to go out in the real world and do some shit? Otherwise, you just live in a permanent simulation. I know that sounds crazy, but I have more news that's not as crazy. So that is all wild. I really think it's going to be happening, short of World War III or whatever. And maybe the specifics won't happen exactly as I said, but there's going to be times in the future where like, holy crap, this is real, is going to be a thing. And I know you might be scoffing at that, and that's okay. So let's bring this back down to earth for number 3 reason to be excited, and that's universal translation. In just a few years, and I am very confident about this because these technologies are already being tested and used in slightly suboptimal forms today, you will be able to wear earbuds or glasses that auto-translate almost all spoken languages around you to your language. So if you sit down let's say in an airport or a waiting area before getting on the gate, and you're in China, everyone's damn near speaking Mandarin Chinese. You have no idea. It's like, ambient noise. And you're just like, oh, it's all Chinese. I don't understand what they're saying. You put on the right earbuds here in the next few years, you're going to hear ambient noise in whatever language you speak. Your fluent Arabic speaker is just going to be Arabic. Your Cantonese speaker, you're hearing Cantonese. Now, they're not saying Cantonese. Their mouths don't move like you think they should, but the auto-translate, whether it's captions or whether it's direct earbuds, is going to translate so fast and so seamlessly that you will hear English or whatever it is, your own language. That is coming. And with speaker systems, speakers on phones, mini speakers inside of headsets and everything like that, and other people having those technologies, you're going to be able to communicate to anyone as you see it in your language, but as they hear it in their language. They communicate back to you in your language, and the processing is done by the edge compute, and you hear it maybe a quarter of a second delayed in your ears, and eventually an amount of delay that your human brain can't even tell. So it's just going to be like live stream, essentially. That is going to be occurring because it's already occurring. Just there's no super popular tech that does this yet. This means a bunch of stuff, but it means that tourism is going to have a second renaissance of sorts. You'll be able to talk to more and more people all over. And when as many people have earbuds and headsets or whatever, or the VR goggles as have cell phones today, which is almost everyone, maybe in the early 2030s or something, you'll be able to like go to Vietnam and just walk around and talk to people and have no problems communicating or getting around or ordering food or anything, because everyone is going to understand each other as if in their native tongue. Not a difficult one. Remember, you want to fuck with me and find out? Ask ChatGPT some shit about other languages. It fucking knows all of them already. I speak fluent Russian, and I ask GPT every now and again things about Russian and shit like that. I'm like, this motherfucker speaks Russian 10,000 times better than I do. Why? It's read way more Russian and heard way more Russian than any other fucking human being of all time. So it is inevitable, and it's soon. It's going to be amazing for tourism, but it also opens up tons of pathways for translingual relationships of all kinds. Business, friendships, and, Scott, I know, romance. Hey, we're really Jerry, right? Because, Jerry likes the Browns. Some of them don't speak English yet, but soon the Jerry will understand you. That kind of ability to interact with every human of the world like you would anyone else in your own community has only been available to like a few polyglots, people that speak a bunch of languages, and even their shit's not as impressive as a GPT by a fucking 10 orders of magnitude. That is coming. So even if you're just on the low-key optimism side of like, fuck all that genetic engineering shit, you're an insane person, Mike. I agreed. Universal translation is coming, and that's just going to be so fucking dope. So dope. Number 4 reason to be optimistic. The decline in violence is almost certainly going to continue. Did I say continue? I sure as shit did. Violence of nearly all kinds has been in decline on average over any length of time measured, especially long time measured, since it has been measured. The most violent period of our history is prehistory. And then long time ago history, middle of the time ago history, recent history is the safest it has ever been. If you want a whole lot of information about how and why this happens, Steven Pinker's The Better Angels of Our Nature is the definitive work on this trend, especially to a lay audience such as you and me. You're going to be like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? All we see on the media is war and shootings and all this crazy stuff. You hear about war and shootings because it's big news. And because cell phone cameras and internet access wirelessly and drones are so ubiquitous and growing in power all the time that they're going to catch all the shit that you're ever going to see violence-wise more and more and more of it. And because major war is much rarer, you can and will hear about violence all the time in the upcoming years because if anything pops off, it's big news. If you were in the 1950s and you watched updates on the Korean War, you might get like a few times a week, the news station will talk about it. It seems like there's a war somewhere. It's pretty fucked up, but it's far away. I don't see a lot of footage of people getting blown up. But don't do this unless you have a really fucking stiff constitution. Right now, you can go and there's 18 trillion websites to watch live GoPro Ukraine versus Russia footage in the fucking trenches. And the news media talks about Russia and Ukraine war all the time. And if you like to see videos about the Russia-Ukraine war updated, your YouTube algorithm will learn that. It'll make it seem like there's war everywhere. And if you're like me and you really like military technology and dynamics and game theory of combat, then your YouTube's like, oh, this guy likes war. And all it shows you is like new Sudan war, blah, blah, war, Myanmar, new war. And you're like, oh my God, we're sinking into fucking terrible war. However, on a global scale and a historical scale, things are less violent than ever. And statistically, violence is likely to continue to fall on average, even though at times it might spike. This is one of these things where a lot of top economists and thinkers will say, just don't watch the news. It's purely for entertainment. They're correct. Things get less violent all the time. There are spikes every now and again. A bunch of fucking immigrants come in from undocumented Venezuela. A few of them are gangsters. That's fucked. But these are little waves in an otherwise calming ocean. And that's a good thing to know because violence blows and less violence in the future is fucking sweet. Number 5. The last thing to keep optimistic for in the future is the absurd future careers and the potential end of mandatory work. And no, I did not stutter. This is on a lighter note than violence. Over time, the kinds of jobs humans do are becoming slowly but surely more safe, physically easier, more enjoyable, and much better compensated. Let me give you a quick timeline of human work. We used to just literally scrape and fight for food and water and shelter as fucking animals. And as Paleolithic humans and small hunter-gatherer bands, just fucking hand-to-mouth survival. For, I was going to say millennia, for millions of years. Us and our ancestors, specifically. Then, about 10,000 years ago, which in the evolutionary epoch timescale is nothing. We just started farming 10,000 years ago, and when we started farming, that was much, much better than subsistence living. Farming was the first time humans generated a chronic caloric surplus ever. Ever. That's intense. Farming blew, but it blew way less dick than getting killed by a mammoth you're trying to fuck up. So farming was better. The work was more predictable, less dangerous, and so on and so forth. Fast forward another order of magnitude, and we have the birth of factories and factory labor. Then we worked in factories, which was better still. Now, here's the funny part. People will tell you, oh my God, like factory work is way worse than farming. Those people almost always and almost everywhere have categorically, forgive the comedic lark here, no fucking clue what they're talking about. Because on the demography, when factories started popping up in major cities around the world 300 years ago, people left farms in droves to get quote unquote shitty factory jobs. Because by our assessment now, those jobs were terrible, those factory jobs, breathing in all that gunk, 10 hours of work, 6 days a week. But do you guys know what it's like to live on a farm and work on a farm? You work dawn till dusk. And sometimes the fucking agriculture is going well and sometimes it's not. Sometimes there's a plague and 30% of every animals die. And you got to shoot the other ones because they may be infected. You fucking starve. You make your own fucking clothes. Maybe there's a general store and you have something to trade and sometimes you don't. Farming is way more brutal on average than factory work. Definitely today and for sure back in the day. Now, another switch, and now when we're into the technological revolution, a lot of us work in offices, right? Or did work in offices. Many people still do. Working in office is categorically not comparable to working in old school factories, and it is categorically not comparable to farming, and is categorically still not comparable to surviving with your fucking claws and teeth alone, and your several tribes members who also have spears. Office work is just orders of magnitude more comfortable, less risky. Scott, what's the risk like of working in an office?
Oh man, carpal tunnel.
At this carpal tunnel, my hips are killing me, right? Because of all this office work, like you would be dead if you were farming because you wouldn't be able to make enough food for yourself with bad hips. So now we have this extra transitional moment that we can talk about is we're transitioning to work at home and mobile work. Lots of people just need a laptop and Wi-Fi to work, and more and more and more people like that. Scott and I are old enough to tell you that like, what constitutes work today when you're working from home is like a dream. It's a dream. Really? You don't even have to go to work anymore and you get paid how much to do what on your laptop and just this pretty colorful screen and your job is like really well described to you. Like you can't compare that to the factory. You can't even compare it to the fucking 1970s office. It is just categorically better on almost all grounds. There's some downsides. You get lonely, all this other stuff, but the upsides are massive. How do you know? When you give people freedom to do whatever they want, they usually want to work from home. They usually don't want to drive to the office or for sure go to the factory or for sure do farming or for sure do subsistence fucking living with your claws in your mouth alone. And here's the thing. That whole time, a bigger and bigger fraction of our total human workforce has worked in leisure and creative pursuits versus drudging labor. Almost every single person in the hunter-gatherer times worked in drudging labor. Farming, still most. Factories, most, but a little fewer. Office work, there's still some boring drudgery going on, but more creative stuff. Now, it's even more of creative pursuits and leisure than drudgery. Here's the thing. Because it looks like, at least now, this is very speculative, that AI might need more and more and more high-quality data, it might make more sense for creators to get more and more money. That is, AI companies, and don't you get it twisted, Meta, who owns Facebook, Instagram, etc., that's an AI company. That's what they do now. They're all AI companies now. Tech is now AI. It's the same thing. They need much more data to train their models, and they have access to people that are willing to live stream oodles of fucking data. Even if you just have your phone out, but in the future, if you have your AR goggles or your glasses, everything your glasses see, the AI gets trained on. It may be very realistic for you to sign a contract in the future to become a creator. Now, here's the thing. On Instagram, kind of anyone can monetize, but the amount that humans and random corporations will pay for your data isn't that high. If AI can make its own synthetic data that trains it just as well about the real world as human-gathered data, pray to God that's true. It's not 100% true yet. In some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. Then, oh my God, AI is just going to take the fuck off and either kill us all, which will be rather painless, or save all of us and upgrade us and all that good stuff. But if AI needs raw human data, they're going to pay you lots of money to just live stream your whole life. Right now, I would have never said this 10 years ago because it was a baffling idea. But right now, a ton of TikTokers, YouTubers, streamers, they're getting paid crap loads of money just to do the thing. There's a little clever bullshit people like to put in the comments sometimes on social media of, If you're not paying for it, then you're the product. Like, you're the product for social media. Good. I want to be the product. If social media companies want to pay me money to just look at stuff and swipe and look around the world so they know what I'm doing with my hands and what my data looks like, and so they can train their models on what real humans are like in the world, then oh my fucking God, please pay me for that shit. That is amazing. And it could make lots and lots and lots of people in the future, it's more all the time, monetize so well on their social media, including like parsing their environments and stuff, that like, that just might be your job. It's weird as it is to say, like, most of us might be influencers in the future. Scott, you're an influencer. You should have low self-esteem about that. Dude, I had a lady in an Uber ask me what I did for a living, and I was real close to saying YouTuber, and I couldn't.
You couldn't bring it up.
It's embarrassing, right? Or are we just outdated?
Nah, you're outdated. I mean, it's embarrassing for someone of your age, but
You old fuck. Jesus Christ, friggin' white pubes. But like, if you tell them like an 8th grader today you're a YouTuber, they're like, holy shit, you're doing the thing.
Oh yeah, like we have friends with kids have YouTube class in school now. Like, it's insane.
The fuck? Something to be optimistic about, by the way. Also, another really quick funny thing. I had a stack of Far Side comics on my desk at home when I was younger, when I was in high school. And this was, I was absolutely not getting laid, by the way, for the record. And I was reading the Far Side comics.
You don't need to say that.
I mean, everyone already knew. It's like a 3-foot tall, like, little kid coming up to you and be like, hey, I can't beat you up. You're like, yeah, kid. Yeah, you didn't have to, but it's nice. It's nice that I can feel safe around you. So I remember there was a joke, like, cause all of them are like little, like, it was like a calendar. So it was every day had a joke. And one of the jokes was 2 parents kind of lovingly embracing each other in like a doorway. And inside the door was a kid playing on the video game console in his room. And the parents had thought bubbles. And it was like, can you save the princess? $100,000. Can you play video games for hours on end? You get a new car. And it was like, that was titled like Hopeful Parents, right? It was written in like sometime in the early 90s, late 80s. Scott, Twitch streaming makes people millions of dollars. So you could tell someone like, no, this isn't a joke in the future. They'd be like, what the fuck? So just to make a point, things that sound completely absurd and too good to be true today are things tomorrow that people are like, yeah, Twitch streamers, that's a thing. And they don't bat a fucking eye. Something to be optimistic about. Really, I had all sorts of expectations for how the world was going to end up when I was younger. And the world has blown away almost all of them categorically by a mile. I'm like, what the fuck? I would never have thought this shit. Last thing to leave out on as a future prediction that you might look forward to. This is one I consider the least controversial of most of the ones, if not all the ones that I'm going to predict. Short of universal translation, this one I'm putting the most money on. And I literally mean money because I literally invest in exclusively low risk, all stocks at the same kind ETFs, except I make one exception, and that's robotics and AI, to which I put even more of my own private wealth, which is substantial. So it'd be really embarrassing to watch if I lose a shitload of money in stocks, but fuck it. The amount of wealth generated by AI and robotics is going to leave humanity behind by the mid-2030s, in my estimate. In fact, once robots are well-trained at most or all human tasks, there might be something like, these are very realistic numbers, by the way. I'm intentionally using not super realistic numbers. Elon Musk has spoken about this. A bunch of people have spoken about this. We might have enough robots that there are 10 times the number of robots that there are humans, even just humanoid robots. And each robot might create an average of like 5 times the value of a human per day. I mean, think about this. The speed at which ChatGPT works. And if you make ChatGPT at least as smart as a human, how much more productive is it than a human? It never sleeps. It has a rate of being correct about problems that outpaces any human. It has all of the internet's worth of knowledge. Any one GPT that you update to this new ability, like you have a fleet of robots. One of them discovers that for the project they're working on, they're let's say they're disassembling a big ship to use the scrap metal in some other thing. They realized like some guy installed the fucking bolts wrong and righty tighty and lefty loosey or backwards. As soon as one robot realizes that, they communicate in the cloud. Every other robot that next second or update or whatever, the next day, very not charitably, is like, oh shit, JK, thanks Bob, the robot. And now Bill, the robot, just starts turning in the other direction. You can't do that with humans. Robots, it's nominally easy for them to start outpacing human productivity by, let's say, 5x. So the average humanoid robot is 5 times more productive, and there's 10 times more robots in the world. That means you can institute a real simple policy. I'm not advocating for this policy, but I think it's pretty dope. 10% tax on every robot's output. If you're a corporation that uses robotics, you get a 10% tax on each robot, its output raw, and you just pay that to the government or whatever the fuck, and the rest of you can keep. No worries. Just a 10% tax. In that environment, if you have that tax and each robot there's 10 times more robots than humans, and each one is 5 times more productive, that means every robot output collected together, that money is enough to give every human for free that amount of money. And that money is roughly 5 times what they would have produced by themselves. So I kid you not that by the mid to late 2030s, every human on Earth might be getting the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of dollars of today's money every year. That's it. And that's only 10% tax on all of robotics output. Now, this is really wild because this kind of policy doesn't crush the economy. It's not a 90% tax. It doesn't disincentivize robotics in any major way. If you tell all robotics manufacturers, look, like universal policy is 10% robot tax, they're going to be like, whatever, 10%, it's not a big deal. They pay taxes like that all the time. No big deal. That won't fuck up the economy or change anything, but it'll give people beyond a universal basic income, and then you don't really have to go to work anymore. And I know that sounds crazy, but it's also almost as inevitable as it is crazy. And this doesn't bake into the fact that the robot workforce will continue to expand on, again, technological timescales and paces. And the per capita generative ability, value-wise, of each robot is also going to go up. So that kind of means at some point in the 2030s, 2040s, we're probably going to enter a world maybe of like universal abundance where like everyone is at minimum 100,000 air. And like, as long as you don't like just go to the club and get bottle service every night, you're just never going to run out of money. And even if you run out of money one week, the robots pay you every week. So your dumbass gets another 10,000 in your account, which you can go piss through or whatever. Are we potentially entering a world of universal abundance? Yeah, that might be happening in the 2030s. And if we can't get excited about that and optimistic about that, I mean, holy fuck. Now look, I'm going to reel this in a little bit before we sign off. Will all of these predictions come to pass? Fuck no, I'm a lunatic raving idiot and half of them are off. But will some of them come to pass? Yeah, I'd bet on it. And some more I didn't get into or I'm not aware of are almost certainly going to come to pass. I don't know it all in this bullshit. I'm just like a fucking child here. So far, here's the big kicker. So far, the arc of progress has been uncontroversially, measurably, predictably exponential for all of recorded human history over the long term. And here's the thing with exponents. What was the long term on the low end of the exponent, on the tail high end, is the very, very short term. So you can bet against progress, but you would have been wrong in almost every other time and place in history. So if you're not betting on progress and things getting a lot better, you're just setting yourself up to be pissed now and pessimistic and wrong in the future for that extra sweet double dip into absurdity. It's like Paul Krugman, phenomenal economist, great contributions to the overall science, predicted that the internet wasn't going to become anything because he said, quote, most people just don't have that much to say to each other. On record, I believe in 97 or 98, he predicted this for the internet. And recently, not to be outdone, I believe, I don't have this on record, so please tell me in the comments I just made this up, but someone told me that Krugman had some pessimistic predictions about AI as well. And for a guy that smart and never learns, that's pretty trippy, but that's just pessimistic fallacy right up, boom, right in your face. I mean, the internet kind of blew everything out of the water, so we had to fucking kind of eat it. Maybe one of the most embarrassing on-record quotes of all time. And just wouldn't bet against AI. I just wouldn't do it, fellas, because it's not just AI. AI is not this new thing that's somehow going to be changing everything. It's that too, but it's just part of a bigger exponential trend of everything getting better all the time. So give some thought to taking the smart bet of being optimistic and let it make you happier today. Tomorrow's probably going to be better than today. And yeah, there's ups and downs, but next year will probably be better than this year. And in a decade, shit might be just unrecognizably better. No, don't just hope and pray. No, do not stop working on problems in your life in the real world. We all need to be working on problems, but just know and remember and maybe even take solace in the fact that very likely all of your work today is probably going to work out really well for tomorrow in that certain sense. And all of our work together as a community, as a society, well, it just might make the world of tomorrow look like paradise compared to the world of today. And that's probably really going to happen and is happening right now. So I'll be seeing you guys next week for what will probably be just a shade better than this week. Have a good one. Cheer up. Optimism is realism, and I'll see you guys next time.